From the shores of Malibu, where the waves are pumping, to the Great Wall of China, where nobody's jumping, and back to the streets of Las Vegas, where the UFC is happening. We are live. This is It's Time Radio, the show we talk about what you think about but may be afraid to voice. Do not worry, we'll talk about it for you. It's No Holds Barred Radio, folks. And to make that even more prominent, we have my co-host, producer, TJ DeSantis. TJ, how are you? We got a big week to talk about here, and we got somebody big to talk about it with.
Yeah,
None other than, huh?
I was just going to say, I bar all the holds. Don't do any of those things to me, please.
All right, you got it. I won't do it. But let's get back to our special guest, friend of the show, great friend of mine, and great friend of every UFC fan out there. And the greatest commentator on the face of the earth, Jon Anik. Jon, how are you?
I am not that, but I am doing well. It's always fun to come on with your friends, right? And when they introduce you as a special guest when you're in a room of friends, it always feels a little bit weird. But it's great to be with you guys. And what a weekend, you know. It's sort of a challenge on the back end of a live event like that to find a comp or a parallel or to try to figure out the balancing act between talking about mixed martial arts and the aesthetic. What a weekend, Buff. I'm sure there's probably no comp for you. And I promise you guys that dinging is not my phone.
It's not mine either. I just looked.
It's actually coming through on mine, and I have no way of stopping it.
Okay. It's his show. He's allowed to have all the dings.
Exactly. Just letting you know.
It's here. Let me turn off my. I know how to stop it. What am I saying? Very simple. Turn off messages. There we go.
One thing you know, when you book me, I won't be late, and I will have at the very least an audio setup that won't offend your producer. So.
Okay, I'm still learning.
Hey, I
about
appreciate
17
the
years.
hell out of
I am
that.
still learning. Definitely. Well, look, it was an incredible show. The expectations were so high. The expectations were met. Credit to the production crew, which Dana White has come out publicly and credited them for. It was a production nightmare. Very little time to rehearse. Got it all done. Jon, I'm sure it was a lot more for you because I know just from the time in between fights when I had to go out and do my thing, the difference in production of 1, 2, 3 countdowns, 10 countdowns. You had the movie playing, you had this playing, you had that playing. My God, what was it like? And the show went a long time. For 10 fights, it went a long time. As a result, we didn't finish till 10:30 or 11 that night.
Yeah, I mean, it was an undertaking unlike any other, and I was talking to my play-by-play brother, TJ, just about some of the challenges that I dealt with. I didn't watch the press conference because we were rehearsing the show during all of that noise. And not that I always watch the press conference live, but I didn't even have time to go back and watch a lot of the things that are normally a part of my fight week just because the focus was put in other directions. So thank God it was 10 fights. You're right. It ended up being sort of an exhaustive night because I think the last 2 fights ended up taking close to 90 minutes. We had the films that needed to be interspersed and everything else. I've done a lot of media since the fight, and it's hard for me to not just dive right into the discussion of give us one more shot in there with a fight card like UFC 307 or UFC 308 and watch us effectively change the live sporting event game forever, right? I just feel as though we have an opportunity now that this one's in the can and the infrastructure in some respects has been laid to celebrate sport or celebrate something else visually while also strategically putting some sort of crazy fight card together, and then I think it would be the greatest sporting event of all time.
Well, I agree with you, and I think it would be very, very cool. Dana's already come public that was a one-and-done situation. Afterwards, he said publicly now, too, that as far as Mexican Independence Day in the future, it's not going to happen in Vegas. He wasn't very happy with the fact they put the boxing event on the same night, even though it did sell out, and it did set a record gate of 21,829,000 for the highest-grossing UFC event in history. So all things point to being a solid, hopefully profitable event, but at a $21 million production cost. Even though there's $21 million plus in tickets sold, that $21 million does not go into the UFC's pocket, as we know.
Hopefully the production cost would go down a little bit, and maybe now that they have had this learning experience, there are ways. I'm not going to sit here and suggest that I would work the show for free. I mean, Buffer certainly won't work the show for free, right? But I guess I just feel as though we experienced so many different things in this venue that were spectacular and without a point of comparison. But what we didn't have was that true UFC live, throaty, lathered crowd. And I don't know how much of that has to do with the fact that the last two fights of the night, while dominant, were not necessarily the most crowd-pleasing fights. You know, Merab Dvalishvili attempted 49 takedowns against Petr Yan, and it was straight fucking chaos, right?
Yeah.
Even if he had brought that type of approach, right? Now, he won a world title on this night. I thought it was near perfect as far as that initiative was concerned. But can you just imagine for a second? Go look at UFC 308, having Robert Whittaker and Khamzat Chimaev leading into Max Holloway and Ilia Topuria with this whole Sphere backdrop. I guess it sounds ungrateful, but I just want the UFC to have another shot in there. And I know there are some hurdles when it comes to the relationship with MGM. I'm not suggesting it has to be an annual exercise, but certainly for UFC 400, whoever's calling those fights, hopefully they get to do it at Sphere.
Well, hopefully that's you calling those fights, John, and me announcing those fights. And I agree with you. I would love to go back to the Sphere. It was a visual experience for everybody there, even overwhelming to a certain extent. But, you know, again, we get back to the basic dollars and cents of the situation. I mean, the most expensive UFC pay-per-view to date produced was a little over $2 million in cost. They estimated this at $8 million. It wound up being over $20 million. Kudos to Dana and the powers that be for bringing in 450 individuals, including multiple Oscar nominees, Emmy and Golden Globe Award winners, just in the Octagon girls' costumes alone, which God knows how much those cost. Those were designed by a 9-time Emmy award-winning wardrobe person. I mean, no costs were spared in this endeavor.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
It was unbelievable. And kudos again to Dana. And I even told Dana at the end, you know, we were in the Octagon, and I said, you pulled it off, right? I mentioned to him earlier, he goes, well, we'll after like the third fight, and he said, well, we'll see. And then at the end, I said, you pulled it off.
Yeah.
And he did.
It really is interesting to think about other sports leagues following suit, and I don't know if it was Craig Borsari or Dana White who was talking about maybe when it comes to venue construction and development that people are going to really start to think about how to maybe have some sort of wall like this, if not a complete structure, right? Even if it was 1/4 of the arena, there's just so many possibilities when it comes to concerts and sports. And it would be far easier, I would think, to execute an NBA game. Buff, I was thinking like you do Celtics-Lakers on Christmas Day, or not even Christmas Day, but you do Celtics-Lakers. You need some sort of fabric or story to tell. And the UFC has a story to tell, whether it's Mexican Independence Day or not. So Noche UFC could be anywhere. You could tell the story of the UFC, or you could just have the sickest championship triple header of all time. But there are a lot of inherent risks. The fight card has to stay together. But I don't know, man. It's nuts, man. Like, it was the broadcasting experience of a lifetime, even if the crowd wasn't, at a crazy decibel level.
Well, on a personal note, and to just add a little to what you just said, on a personal note for me, on a bucket list, to be on the Sphere, the way that they did that 3 times during the night, that just blew me away. I know TJ's got some footage you'll probably throw into the show. But the show is not about me, as we know. It's about the fighters and about the fans, and just everybody got their fan-filled experience. There's no question. I thought the energy, the viewing audience, even though all the way at the top, the Octagon looks so small, but the video visuals that were on the Sphere to watch it, like you're watching a huge TV set at home, I think solved part of that issue, and it was star-studded. We saw that. Dana has already come out and said that Noche will not happen at the Sphere again. They're looking to do it in Mexico next year, possibly in Guadalajara, where they're building a huge arena there. That they're doing, and he said if not, it'd be Mexico, Texas, or Arizona, right?
Yeah, it's going to be an annual showcase, and it's going to be great. And this fight card, the pay-per-view, featured a fight that could end up in the Hall of Fame one day.
Absolutely.
Between Daniel Zellhuber and Esteban Ribovic. So
it has the greatest round I've ever seen, guys. Greatest single round in mixed martial arts I've ever watched.
Right.
I think a lot of people will definitely agree with you on that, without question.
Yeah. So.
Yep.
Again, it's not as though the mixed martial arts component of this night was not without value, but, forgive me as an MMA fan first and maybe a commentator second to fantasize a little bit about Khamzat Chimaev fighting in front of that fucking wall.
And that's the other thing too. Like I understand that you're talking about, wanting to go back and Dana not wanting to go back. But here's the thing: I always say this when anybody does a first-time podcast or they do a first-time commentary booth where they don't feel comfortable. Like your first effort is always going to be your worst because you're facing the unknown for the very first time. If you're able to go back into it with that experience, just think about how infinitely more prepared, more structurally sound everything's going to be, and that's really why I want it to happen again in the future, because if this was the worst showing for the UFC in the Sphere, think about what the second one's going to be, because the first one was pretty damn good.
No, the second one's going to be absolutely phenomenal. Getting back to the fights a little bit here, you're right. Zohuber and Ribovics, oh my God, seriously, one for the books. And I'm glad they got the bonus, the whole 9 yards. Brian Ortega and Diego Lopez. I have to say, John, I think Diego Lopez is going to be wearing gold around his waist at some time in the near future. It's just there.
Yeah.
Brian got hit with a combo that just would put any of us down for the count for 10, 20, 30 seconds or 5 minutes. Tough as nails. Love the guy. He's a friend. I can't say enough about Brian Ortega, what he does for his community and everything. Have to ask that $1 million question mark. Johnny, do you think it's time for Brian to consider stop fighting?
Not at all. And I'm not
I'm glad
ever.
you said that. Thank you.
I am not ever
Thank you.
in the business of retiring fighters. The only time I ever have a strong opinion, I think, is when I think unequivocally, absolutely, they should keep fighting. And Brian Ortega should keep fighting. He was supposed to move up to 155 pounds. Seemed as though he was earmarked to fight Charles Dubronx Oliveira at Sphere even, potentially. But the Diego Lopez fight came up because they needed a big fight, a co-main event at UFC 303. And Ortega obviously stepped up and fell ill, and the weight issue and everything else. But no, I think there's a lot of fight left in the dog. I just think it's got to be at lightweight. So I'm excited to see him in some of these matchups, I can't speak to his relative commitment when he doesn't have a fight on the books. That's the one thing you know about Diego Lopez as he is chasing gold and glory, is that he is not only the BJJ coach at Lobo MMA, but he is training all the time, getting better all the time. And if you're not getting better, you're getting worse. So, I think T-City's got a lot of fight left, but it's got to be at 55.
Thanks. I appreciate you saying that, because on the internet you read, oh, it's time to hang it up, this, that, and the other. No, I'm totally with you, John. Totally agree with you. And it's all about Brian's personal hunt. I know he's at championship mode. He looks for that gold. He's just not fighting for a paycheck. So good. I want to see Ortega back in that octagon when he's ready to go. I noticed his ankle got damaged a whole bit, but everybody gets hurt in these fights.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a tough sport. His strength of schedule I would put up against really any featherweight of all time. Obviously, he competed for the title twice, and I think this Diego Lopez loss, to your point, could age pretty gracefully. Rogan said, gosh, man, probably at least 12 months ago that he thought Diego Lopez was destined for championship status, and it's just crazy. It's just crazy to think about his story. Fights on the Contender Series, loses his next fight. Maybe it looks like the UFC dream is done with finality. He's got a lot of fights. And then he fights Movsar Evloev on 5 days' notice, nearly submits him, and now he's reeled off like 5 or 6 straight in like 15 months. Just insane.
Exactly. Alexa Grasso and Valentina Shevchenko, technical fight all the way. Valentina, the game plan needed to fight Grasso. I have to say, I'm sorry to see Grasso get that cut. As soon as I saw that cut, I know how fast, as we all do that.
That's actually not Grasso. That's Irene Aldana.
I'm sorry, Irene Aldana. Pardon me.
Different fight.
Yeah, good fight. Solid fight.
Yeah.
Irene Aldana with that cut that she suffered. Wow.
Dude. Bro. So this oftentimes becomes a springboard for conversations about the worst cuts in MMA history. And TJ certainly would have more to offer on that front than me. But my gosh, man, I am not of the squeamish type. And I sometimes, not as much as my twin brother Jason, but I seek out these photos. And I sent a text to Rogan in D.C. I was like, hey, do you guys want to see this? I knew Joe would have seen it, but I know D.C. don't want to see it. You don't want to see it stapled up or stitched up or before and afters or anything. Yeah. And, gosh, I mean, with a nod to Gregory RoboCop Rodriguez, if that isn't the worst cut in MMA history, I'm not really sure what is.
The stapled up picture of this of Eldana and how it's like turned more black and blue around the cut, like that is the most horrific post fight cut I've ever seen. That's tough.
Oh man. Yeah, it's bad.
Bad.
I don't even know. What was interesting was that the blood was masking it, right? And I think that's part of the reason the ringside physician was not called in. But by the time we showed the cut on broadcast, I looked to my right, and because it was the featured prelim, and we were moving our way up to the 400s for our pay-per-view open, Rogan's in there to interview Big Norma Dumont, and I am there by myself because DC's maybe going to the bathroom or getting ready for the pay-per-view. And that's when we show the cuts sort of vulgarity for the first time. And I'm sitting there having to react without an analyst, and it's like, oh, my God.
It was crazy, and you mentioned one thing just now. There was only one negative of the night, if you can call it a negative. When it came time to go to the men's room during the show, if you had to take a pee, it was a long, long walk. We had to time that perfectly. Did you leave your desk at all during that night, John?
No, and when I went up to do the post show for ESPN, I felt really badly for the ESPN security guard because, man, it felt like I urinated for 3 or 4 minutes. It just wouldn't stop. So, yeah, no, I held it for 8 hours as I needed to do. And, there was no way to get that type of relief. And I guess none of us could have really foreseen that a broadcast that was maybe scheduled for 5.5, 6 hours on format could have gone as long as it did with 10 fights. But, it is.
It went
what
late.
It is.
I was booked for an appearance at Fountain Blue just to come out and introduce the big DJ John Summit there, and it's like I almost thought I was going to be late because we were going so late. Anyway, I got there, managed to get a bite to eat, went out, introduced him. The crowd, it was so crowded, John, that I walked in, introduced him. 10 minutes later, had to leave. Literally. Like this, when you're standing there and people I'm just not comfortable in that kind of an atmosphere.
Steve Miller Band, take the money and run.
I guess that's what you could call it. That's for sure.
I like the Run DMC version better, but that's just me.
Yeah, right.
The Octagon Girls, first time in 15 years, we didn't use or whatever it's been, used other women instead of the Octagon Girls, but specifically designed for the show with the 6 young ladies that were there in those amazing costumes. I don't know if any of them are going to stay on with us in the future, but they, again, getting back to the spectacle, everything down to the most minute detail, and including the high. Did anybody win the $25,000 for the 3 Easter eggs in the videos?
I don't know. I thought the Octagon Girls looked fantastic. I didn't know the lengths they went to in terms of hiring the greatest costume designers in the world. But I got to tell you, TJ and Bruce, when I got the document, and I don't know if your audience thinks this is interesting. I probably would from the play-by-play guy. When I got the document of all the new Octagon Girls and their names and their hobbies and everything else, I'm sitting here thinking, like, man, so much of my job doesn't have to do with fighting right now. Like, what is going on here? I can't prep the fucking Octagon Girls right now. Like, can you please just tell me their names when they walk out? Trying to pay off costume details. I'm trying to call a fight. So, it was a lot, but they looked spectacular. It wasn't as easy to determine who they were because they were so painted and, robed, if you will. So, it's easier for me to be like, all right, there's Brooklyn Wren.
Right. Well, bring him in each time I made a decision on the fight, which quite frankly was every fight that night, pretty much. It was an added thing, sort of similar to the boxing world.
Right.
All right. With that, we've got the Sean O'Malley, Merab Dvalishvili fight. Okay. People are saying that Sean had a torn labrum and in the hip. Is that what the injury is?
No, it's in the shoulder. They replaced
in the shoulder, right? The labrum in the shoulder, but they were saying hip, but that's
no.
Shoulder.
I mean, I believe it is actually the hip. I know he has had a torn labrum in his hip prior. I don't know if he had it surgically repaired. I have a torn labrum in my shoulder that I am not having surgically repaired, but I believe with him it is the hip.
Okay.
And there are a lot of different angles here. There's the O'Malley rebuild. There's the fact that he could have emerged as the champion and still needed this procedure. And then in this division that is so ripe with contenders, you would have had the undisputed UFC Bantamweight Championship on hold potentially for a year because it was held by maybe the biggest American superstar in the sport other than Jon Jones and Sean O'Malley. So Merab's the champ. A lot of people felt like if he could get this opportunity stylistically, he would take advantage. He did. Maybe wasn't his most entertaining performance. It wasn't nearly as entertaining for me as Bilal Muhammad's win over Leon Edwards, but it matters not, and it's going to be fascinating now to see this division move forward. It's always amazing to see a first-time champion break through, and Merab's story is, particularly heartwarming. He's just a great human being. Couldn't be happier for him.
He is.
But, yeah, the O'Malley rebuild is going to be something because there's going to be a killer in his bracket, whoever it is, when he comes back in a year or so.
Well, he's come publicly saying it'll probably be about a year before we see him fight again. He's going to take his time for himself, and rightfully so. There were a lot of fighters there, a lot of celebrities there. Jon Jones was there, sitting with Ryan Garcia. Dana heard that Jon Jones and Ryan Garcia were together and going out and partying in Las Vegas. God knows what that could create. But I'm excited to see Jon getting back. He was all over me about how excited he was coming back in the Octagon. And Jon, real quick, personal prediction. Jon Jones reigns supreme over Stipe, one of my favorite people in the world. And I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying if Jon Jones wins, do you think he fights again? Because he would have to fight Aspinall.
I don't think Jon Jones will fight again. Unless, of course, he were to lose to Stipe Miocic. I don't think Johnny Bones is going out like that. It seems to me that a lot of the fan base feels as though it's an afterthought, the outcome of that fight between Jon Jones and Stipe. Now, Stipe was 38 the last time he fought. He'll be 42 when this fight happens. I understand why that gives people some pause. I remember when the fight was announced and Stipe was like 40 instead of 42, and I'm thinking, why is this betting line not giving the consensus most accomplished UFC heavyweight of all time anything resembling a shot against Jon Jones? And now it's 2 years later. So, I don't know. Far be it from me to sort of doubt his chances. But beyond that, it's just hard for me to wrap my head around Jon Jones sort of taking the Tom Aspinall challenge, being, whatever and and riding off into the sunset, win or lose after that. I think if he beats and finishes Stipe, we're going to have to enjoy him while we can because he'll thereby be gone.
For the record, I firmly believe that Jon Jones will win this fight against Stipe Miocic, but let me play devil's advocate for a brief moment, or at least try to introduce some doubt into people that are backing Jon without question. We don't really know how Jon Jones reacts to getting hit by a heavyweight. We didn't see it in the Cyril Gane fight. Right. He was getting hit a lot in the Dominic Reyes fight. He got hit a lot previously in his fight with Alexander Gustafsson. I feel if you say without question Jon Jones is going to beat Stipe Miocic, he might, but I think Stipe's going to at least get one on the button. That's just the type of fighter that he is. He generally lands at least a couple of strikes, and it'll be very interesting for me to see how Jon Jones reacts to getting hit by someone who should still have all that power. It's the last thing to go in Stipe.
I'm with you. By the way, I just noticed I'm wearing a black belt surfing shirt, which is in honorarium of Brian Ortega because I want him to continue fighting.
Yeah.
Just to put that
it
down
is
on
interesting,
paper.
though, on Stipe, right, and the whole heavyweight thing, because not only has Jon Jones barely competed since 2020, right, but he himself hasn't had a fight since UFC 285, and that was in March of 2023, and his work was expeditious that night. So your point is well taken, TJ. I guess it's just I feel like when I ask my contemporaries in sort of an optimistic way, dude, but what about, they just kind of don't necessarily see it, but we shall find out. Hopefully it all holds together.
Well, we will see. There's a fight at the Apex this weekend. I will not be announcing. Joe Martinez doing the duties announcing. What, TJ?
No, there's not. We're off this weekend, baby.
Woo-woo.
Oh, shoot. I had one. Boy, what is with my mistakes this trip? I'm sorry.
Right.
Oh, I had up the wrong card. That's October. That's right. No, Paris. Next week. Johnny, you're not going, right?
No, I've never been to Paris. They don't call my number over there.
I wish
You're
they
not
would.
romantic enough over there, John.
The French really don't like me, so the UFC is just as a protection mechanism keeping me.
I doubt that
States,
very much,
so.
John. You're beloved all over the world. I'm going to fly in on Friday, get there at noon, do the show at Saturday at 6, and just come right back. Just bing, bing, bing.
Steve Miller Band, baby. Take the
Got to do what you got to do. But then the week after that is Salt Lake City, and I know I'm going to see you in Salt Lake City.
I will be there running on the treadmill at altitude.
Okay, I'll be with you. Not running.
Huh.
All right, here we go. It's football. It's NFL. Wow. You been able to pick any games? Because the first 2 weeks have been treacherous.
So, yeah, I'm doing okay. I am, for the third straight season, hosting an NFL podcast with my twin brother, Anik versus Anik, now on Oddshark on YouTube. We just filmed our live episode on Thursday morning. We're live now every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. So most of my NFL work for Week 3 has been done. I am 6-4 in the contest thus far, which is better than 4-6. I'm coming off of 4-1 after a 2-3 in Week 1. And depending on when people ingest this, the Thursday night game between the Jets and the Patriots will have already expired. But I am looking at New York and its home opener at anything less than a touchdown tonight. And that's part of my pretty robust card for Week 3, Buff.
I'm with you on that. I'm all behind the Jets, minus 6 points. Definitely. I bought it down to 5.5, as I always do when it gets like that, because I don't want to lose by 2 field goals. But I believe that they'll win by a touchdown or more. For sure. And one of the games that I think is kind of a lock, in a way, I don't know how you feel about it, but I think Baker Mayfield has been spreading the ball all around.
Yeah.
And I just think the Buccaneers over the Broncos, Buccaneers by a touchdown.
Yeah, Tampa Bay, playing in Florida in September, the way Baker Mayfield's playing, they do have some injuries, but yeah, that feels almost as safe, at least on a money line, as any game on the board. Marquee game is the Ravens at the Cowboys. Tom Brady calling the Dallas game for the third successive week. Ravens are -1. And I think part of that is rooted in the fact that they're 0-2 and essentially playing for their season. I don't know that Baltimore's going to go to 0-3, so I do have a Ravens ticket. But this league is crazy, man. Like, there's nothing really resembling a lock for me. And the Carolina Panthers are true bottom feeders right now. They're 0-2. They can't stop anybody. They're going to Las Vegas to face the Raiders, who beat the Ravens in Baltimore last week. And yeah, I got a Raiders ticket, but it might be a square one, right? Like, I can't wait to see how the Panthers go into Vegas and somehow upset the Raiders. That's just the nature of this league, but I do like Vegas.
Yeah, well, the Panthers are plus 5.5 points going into Vegas. I would buy that to 6 and take the Panthers. Even though I'd like to see the Raiders win, of course, I just think the spread favors the Panthers in that one.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather go on Naked and Afraid than walk up to a sportsbook operator and give him money to bet on the Panthers right now. But we'll see. I mean, maybe you and I go head-to-head.
Personally, I'm not touching that game. That was just my opinion.
Yeah.
The game that I think is going to be interesting, the Philadelphia Eagles played last Monday night. Eagles -1 at the Saints. The Saints had one heck of a game. It's a tough one to call, but I got to go with my Eagles. I just don't see them after they lost on Monday Night Football with I thought was a couple of wrong calls. Shouldn't they have kicked that field goal in the first quarter?
I feel like your head coach is just okay for me, Buff.
Yeah.
The Eagles head coach is just okay for me, if I'm being truthful with you.
That's okay. I'm with you. But look at the talent on that team.
There's no doubt. So that is really a huge early season game in the NFC. The Saints, I think, have surprised some people. They're actually -2.5 right now.
Oh, they are?
Philadelphia here. So, yeah, they've just been probably the best team in the NFL when you consider all 3 phases. But I can understand why people, at least if you look from the preseason on in and what this betting line might have been preseason and the overall season-long expectations for Philly, not out of the realm of possibility that they win as a slight road underdog, but I know my twin brother's pretty bullish on the Saints this weekend. So,
well, Derek Carr has got the best rating of any quarterback in the league right now. The Philadelphia defense, which you can't say after they let the other team stroll down the field with a minute 48 or whatever was left in that game on Monday night to score the touchdown. I got to tell you, John, I had here's where the tension goes when you bet on a game and you take the spread. I had the Eagles -5, right? So obviously when they kicked the field goal, I thought, oh, great. And then, of course, they ran all the way down the field for the touchdown. That's where that tension and every part of your body starts to pucker, as you're watching that kind of thing, which, quite frankly, I love that kind of tension in a football game when I've got a little action on it.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that is what you're paying for. It's the entertainment, and there are sports gamblers that I talk to that are so twisted, present company maybe included at times, that the losses almost feel better than the wins because it's like, of course,
Yeah.
right? I know my stuff to such an extent, and I know that this league is so backwards that you watch, dude, the Carolina Panthers, man, watch, they'll go beat the Raiders, like Just watch. Just watch. We'll talk next week, and the Panthers will go beat the Raiders, and I will now ask my kids if they're okay going to state schools,
Yeah,
because
exactly.
I'm so convicted.
And one other game I want to comment on is the 49ers at the Rams. 49ers are minus 8 points. I don't know where they're at right now in the schedule. Excuse me, in the odds makers thing. But I just think the 49ers are a lock to cover the spread and beat that game. The Rams, again, are coming out like the Lambs.
Yeah.
You know?
So recently, my twin brother, and I keep injecting his name into the conversation, but now he is doing some NFL content for OddsShark, and he's handicapping, hosting, and all these things. And one of the hosts asked him on one show, do you and your brother have NFL injury rankings? I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I mean, first of all, we're like UFC guys, but I guess that's beside the point. But like, no, we don't have NFL injury rankings, but it has to be a jumping off point when you're handicapping this league, especially a couple weeks in right now, because part of the reason that number for Rams and 49ers is so bloated is just because the Rams are injured. So reluctantly, I dove into the injury report this morning, and it's pretty robust for some of these teams. But no, I will never have NFL injury rankings. I'm not trying to get fired. I feel like if my bosses found out that I had NFL injury rankings, they'd be like, maybe we should get somebody who's a little bit more devoted to the UFC.
Okay. Speaking of the injury rankings, how's Philadelphia doing on injuries, John?
They are pretty healthy. I'm trying to think. I didn't necessarily handicap that game because it wasn't a game that I was looking to bet because I like both teams. But I don't know that they're as banged up as some other outfits, but I don't have that information for you exactly right now.
Okay, no worries. All right, anything else on the NFL? We already talked about the Jets for Thursday night. And what's your lock of the week?
Well, I do like Buffalo on Monday night home to Jacksonville. I just feel like Josh Allen is sort of smarting a little bit and on an MVP trajectory. It's 5.5 right now. I think for someone like you, maybe you try to buy it down to 3.5 or so, whatever you're inclined to do. Buffer the point buyer that he is. But I'll be looking at Buffalo in prime time. I'll be looking at Kansas City in prime time. Patrick Mahomes coming off not a great game for him. So I sort of like him against the Atlanta Falcons. But, no, just excited to have a weekend here at home. I had to stay in Vegas for some business on the other side. So just excited to have a weekend at home and watch the NFL. There's nothing quite like 1 p.m. Eastern time on a Sunday for a lot of us football heads. So Minnesota Vikings also made my card this week. I only bring that up because your producer has Minnesota roots. He don't want to hear it.
Screw the Vikings. Like I said,
Yeah,
got
he's
out of
not
that
always big on the
relationship a long
Vikings.
time ago. They've used and abused me too much.
Huh.
Only
2-0.
time I'm going to cheer for them, they got to be second half NFC Championship game leading. Then I'll get back on the bandwagon.
Another good start for the Vikes, 2-0, and playing the 2-0 Houston Texans this weekend. I got Minnesota catching points. We'll see.
Okay. Good luck on all that. I'm with you on all that. And we'll see how all that pans out. I wanted to let you know when I was in Vegas on Thursday, I appeared at La Bonita Markets. It's Time Energy finally has been released. We're starting with the release in Vegas at the La Bonita Markets. The turnout was great. The reception was great. The comments, everybody loves the product. It'll be available on Amazon. You can order directly starting next week, from what I'm told. And here's the build-up, guys. It's here. TJ, you'll be able to get it. Trust me. You'll get it.
What flavors? What flavors?
This one's red berry, but we're coming out with mango and two others.
Okay.
So this is red berry right here, and it's really, really good.
Gotcha.
So very proud of that. Diddy, arrested. Serious stuff. I wonder what the repercussions from this are going to be. Other celebrity, kind of like the Epstein thing. Who went to Epstein Island? That's like who went to Diddy's parties. What's on those videotapes? God only knows. But I don't think this guy's going to get out of jail.
Yeah,
No
I
bail.
mean, this is wild. I am not always locked into everything that is happening when it comes to pop culture and celebrities. I did talk to Daniel Cormier about this just because we were filming a pilot. And I don't even know where to begin. I guess part of the story is rich people paying people to, like, do things. And that, to me, sounds interesting, right? Like paying somebody $20,000 to do something stupid. So that was sort of what I was talking about as opposed to all of these crazy transgressions and things that I am reading about. But I think it's kind of fun to be like, not stupid human tricks, but, I wish I had just $10,000 in every corner of my room so I could, like, pay my friends to, like, do stupid exercises as if we're 20 years of age.
I'm not familiar with this. What is this bit about the paying $20,000?
No, it's not 20 grand. It's just that I think P. Diddy, part of this story is like, got off on paying people to do things, you know?
Time will tell. This is going to be interesting how all this pans
Like
out.
Bruce Buffer offering Jon Anik $20,000 to get in a fucking bikini and wear it around as a bartender at one of his poker games at his house.
For the record, folks, I did not do that.
Well, 20 grand's not my number, so,
For the record, John, if I did do that, would you accept the money?
20 grand's not my number, but we could talk offline.
Okay. All right. We'll talk offline on that. That's for sure.
That's my number, Buff. I'm gonna get into this. 20 grand. You got it.
TJ,
You got it.
Okay, TJ in a bikini.
Yeah, I'm more curvy too. So
yeah, I
you
actually
get your
think. TJ. Anybody who's watching on UFC Fight Pass understands that TJ derobing is not a new thing.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
Oh boy.
I mean,
John, what's up for you? What's going on in your life aside from this?
So I can tell your audience that in a few days I will fly to my old stomping grounds, Bristol, Connecticut. I'll be at ESPN filming a special with DC because he fought Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic a combined 5 times. So we're going to dive into all of that with him. And then it'll be Salt Lake City, and everything is better during football season, so there's an extra skip in my step a little bit. But it's been a very intensive year, a lot of internationals, a lot of just intense pay-per-view environments. So just excited to finish the year strong. 2 in October, 1 in November, 1 in December. And then, we'll see if any of my kids end up on the naughty list or not. But just excited to have the schedule slow down a little bit. The summer was pretty breakneck for me.
Yeah, it was pretty breakneck for me too. But so I will see you in Abu Dhabi. I will see you in Salt Lake City. You're not going to be in Edmonton. I'll see you at Madison Square Garden in November, and then Vegas for UFC 310 on the 7th, and that's it, right?
Yeah, we'll see. I might go to December 14th in Tampa as a fan for the first time.
I can't believe you won't be announcing it being so close to home, commentating it.
Hey, they call my number, I go. I mean, maybe it's the same issue I have in Paris that they don't like me in Tampa. Would they call, I show up,
All right, well, I'll be in Tampa, so I'll see you there, that's for sure.
I'm hoping actually to be Octagon side with my daughter Riley, just sitting in the VIP section, which I've never been able to do. I've never been able to do it in my time with the UFC, so I'm hoping that she'll suck it up and deal with the 4-hour drive and be there with me. So
I was just going to ask you flying or driving, but you just answered that question.
I don't fly unless I absolutely have to. Otherwise, it's wheels to the pavement.
Gotcha. John, tell us about the NFL show you have now and where people can watch it.
So we go at each other pretty good, and I think it's not necessarily disrespect. Maybe it's an underlying brotherly love, but I would go at him in sort of an attack dog way that I would probably never go at any of my broadcasting contemporaries. So that's part of the backdrop for us making 5 picks against the spread every week in the NFL, which is sort of a lead into this super contest in Las Vegas that Buff, we have participated in for a long time now. And basically you spend $1,000 on the contest, you pick 5 games against the spread, and if you can be some sort of crazy 75% combination of lucky and good, you might just walk with $1 million or so. But we have yet to cash. We were like 15 games over 500 last year, which is pretty darn good. And we now have our own entries this year. The show is built around that. And the only real challenge is just the UFC pay-per-view weeks when my time is sort of spread in different directions. But labor of love, man. I mean, you and I, when we're screwing around in airport lounges, we're handicapping NFL games, so it's not too far out of my lane.
That's it. Exactly what we're doing, if not watching them in the lounges on the way home.
Right.
For sure. John, I know you got to go. Appreciate you being on the show, as always.
Fellas, don't give it too hard to P. Diddy. We got to keep giving Merab Dvalishvili his flowers, of course. And let's just hope Sphere was not one of one, because I hope everybody can experience that. If you are in Las Vegas, even if it's not your genre, I would go to a concert there. And I have a sneaking suspicion that fan interest will be such that we'll be there again, and Bruce Buffer's face will be on the outside of the exosphere.
Well, on the outside or not, but I do hope we go back at some time in the future. If not, more times in the future. Quite an experience.
Yeah.
For sure. And also, one last thing. The Canelo fight was there, right? Which supposedly I heard was a sellout also. It's amazing how much business can be done in Vegas on a sports weekend. 2 major fights selling out 2 arenas. I don't know if that's happened before.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I don't like boxing anymore, if I'm being truthful. They just hold all the time, and the refs let them do it. And I buy a few fights a year, but you ain't going to get me promoting Canelo Alvarez after Noche UFC.
Yeah.
And I'm not always a company guy. If you listen to this whole conversation, I'm not a shill, right? I'm trying to get back inside that sphere with a different fight card. But, yeah, I'm not going to give Canelo Alvarez his flowers because the combat sports leader is the UFC, and Las Vegas belong to us on that weekend, you can be sure. So
Exactly. Well, all I can say is about Vegas is once an NBA team comes there,
Oh,
they're building the baseball stadium. It's going to be the sports capital of the world, period.
already the entertainment capital of the world.
Already.
It's interesting to think about a place actually being the sports capital of the world because you can be Titletown and you can be Boston, Massachusetts, and having all these championship parades. But how do you actually be the sports capital of the world? I think Vegas is almost the only city that could even attempt to accomplish that.
Agreed. And it's doing it. John, love you like a brother. Thanks for coming on the show. See you in Salt Lake City.
Fellas, have a great day and a better evening. Thanks for having me, and best of luck on that NFL board in week 3.
Hi, everybody. I've had an absolute blast recording your championship intros on audio and also on video. And for those of you that didn't know, the videos can be done special exactly the way you like them because these are green screens and we can do them with a scene behind me. Do you want a fighting scene? Do you want a beach scene? Do you want a race car scene? Any scene you want, we can give it to you. It's your theme and my pleasure. Just write our offices and we will answer you with the exact fee involved and how it'll get done. So here we are, and now it's time, and it's your choice. Cheers!
And we're back. Always good to have John on the show, friend of the show, friend of mine, friend of everybody's. He's so good at what he does, TJ.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
Yeah, it is pretty great. I got to give him all the credit. All right, we've covered a number of things. We're not going to go into too much on the news here, but I do need to send my sincere love, condolences, and best wishes to the family of my good friend, best friend, since he was 13, Chad McQueen. I've talked about him on the show before, but Chad passed away last week at the age of 63. We've been friends again since he was 13 and I was 16. I can't say enough about Chad. He's the son of the famous actor Steve McQueen. Did quite a bit of acting, known for his role as Dutch in the original Karate Kid film with Ralph Macchio. Chad actually hit a wall in a race car, racing like Formula V racing, if I'm not mistaken, at 182, 192 miles an hour a number of years ago. Was never the same since, and apparently died of organ failure, leaving his family and such.
That's terrible.
His dad died when he was the age of 50. Did you know Steve McQueen passed away at the age of 50?
I do, because that's how old my dad was when he passed. And,
really?
Yeah, I think you were the person that told me that. So it's sad. Like when you're a kid, it seems like 50 is so old. You know what I mean? And then when you hit about 30, 35, you realize you're 15 years away.
Uh-huh.
And now I'm 40. Like if I live to be 75, I still feel like I'm going to be young, Buff. Like, look at you. You're still going in your 60s, and you're kicking around like you're still 19 years old.
Yeah, I guess I am. Not recovering as fast as when I was 19, but obviously still enjoying the energy and the passion for what I do. But getting back to this again, Chad, my good friend, may you rest in peace. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
With that, TJ, we have another week here. We'll talk next week before I head off to Paris. And anything to tell the audience before we go?
Our buddy Callum Walsh is fighting in his homecoming as this posts. The fight might be happening like right now.
Right.
So if you don't check it out live, you can do so anytime on UFC Fight Pass. Check out the King's return to Dublin as he looks to defend his WBC Continental America's Super Welterweight Championship. It is available for you right now on UFC Fight Pass.
Awesome. No, all my wishes go out to Callum, too. What a very fine young man and definitely just great for boxing. Great for boxing. And it's in Dublin, Ireland.
Yep.
Yep. So that's going to be a very, very exciting event to go to, I'm sure. All right, TJ. Everybody, I wish you all the best coming off this strong week. And today is truly the first day of the rest of our lives. So let's enjoy this day. Let's make the best day we can, best week we can, be the best you can. So when you step on that yellow brick road to your future, you're performing your best, whether you're first, second, 10th, or whatever. Being your best means you're winning. As we always say on This Time Radio, we are all about winning. And you want to be a role model to your sphere of influence. And just stay positive. Spread that positive energy. The world can use as much of it as we can give. All right, TJ. I will talk to you next week. Everybody enjoy your week, enjoy your weekend, enjoy the NFL, enjoy your lives. Buffer out. Cheers.